Good.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here with His Excellency. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
The world is rather gloomy these days, and so I was really very inspired when I started reading all the materials that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is putting out in terms of the Vision 2030, the Compass report that comes from FII. They all talk about a vision for a positive tomorrow. All of us in this room grew up with a sense that progress is inevitable. Of course we're going forward. Of course we're evolving. So now I just leave it up to His Excellency to make sure we leave this room with that same sentiment. It's too much of a burden. But why don't we get started? You have been holding these summits, the priority summits, for 7 years. Can you share with this group what the goals are of the summits and why you've chosen to come to Hong Kong this time?
Good morning. We started the FII back in 2017 with just a thought. We want to make a global conference for the world, talking about the priorities, investment initiatives. And we've been very successful. We got, every year, it's getting better, improving more. And then we decided to branch out internationally. So we went to London, to New York, to Miami. And this is the first Asian branching out, which is Hong Kong. And the question is, why Hong Kong? Because Hong Kong is a global city. It's one of the major hubs, not only in the capital market or the financial markets, but also with innovation. And also it's a proximity from not only China, but the rest of Asia. And Asia, if you look at it, it has accounted for about 52% of the global growth in tech companies' revenue, 43% of startup funding, 51% of spending on the R&D, and almost 88% of patents filed. And the region is expected to grow by about 4.6% in 2023. Also, China is home to 26% of the world's unicorns. And Hong Kong is basically the international gate city and a trading hub and also innovation hub. And we knew this long ago, since we started doing our international investments. And that's why we opened up back in 2020. It wasn't the best timing, but we opened up our office in Hong Kong, in addition to our New York office, London office, and the regional offices that we have in Jordan, and Oman, in Egypt, in Qatar, and hopefully very soon we will open up in China and India. So these basically the reasons why we chose Hong Kong. It's the accessibility to the world. It's a global city, and it's a proximity to China and the rest of Asia.
Well, those of us who live and love Hong Kong, thank you very much for that decision. I run an organization called the Center for Asian Philanthropy and Society, which I co-founded with an upcoming speaker, Ronnie Cham. And we do work on how private resources are brought to bear on doing good. What's the role of philanthropy, CSR, impact investing, all the ways in which private money can do good.
Right.
Your organizations have been spending quite a bit of resources on AI. AI is a controversial topic. Do you believe that AI can be a force for good?
Like anything else in the world, it could be a force of good or force of evil. I mean, even food itself, if you have too much of it, it's going to harm you. Fire, agriculture, everything. So AI, definitely, with the right framework, with the right regulations, with the right investments, I think it will definitely be a force of good. The Industrial Revolution happened, and it changed how people live, reside, work, think, even learn. Then came other things like the telephone, the train, the radio, the television, the mainframe, followed by the communication like the cellular phones, then the internet, and now it is the AI.
Right.
So it's going to change the world as we know it today. And of course, you need to create the whole ecosystem for AI to make sure that it's going to be a force of good.
Now, everyone knows, and we're all surprised by how fast AI is evolving and adapting, faster than governments can often make regulations. Does that worry you, or do you feel that governments can step up to the plate sufficiently?
Like any great innovation, any disruption, usually it's led by the entrepreneurs. It's not the other way around. I will give an example.
Please.
Uber, when they started, there was no regulations, right? But it was good for, the whole share economy was good for the consumer and people, making things more efficient and more cost effective. The same thing with AI. If we're going to wait for the governments to put the regulations, then the entrepreneurs and the business leaders will start their work. They're going to be a lag, maybe decades, not only years or months. So I think governments, AI started as a concept long ago. Then it was started to materialize back in 2014. But now with the OpenAI and the ChatGPT, it was the thing that demonstrated how strong and how powerful AI can be. And that's why it attracted more attention from investors around the world, from governments, from people, consumers, and it's happening. Now, of course, there's a lot of catching up to do. I think the European Union did issued something about the regulations of AI. We, at Saudi Arabia, we're working on the AI strategy, on nationwide AI strategy. Then our investments, just like you mentioned, started, so we need to align it with the strategy that we have, and also creating a regulator. The regulator work will be basically three major pillars or verticals. One is to put the framework, which is the controls, the freedoms, everything, just for people to understand what they're getting into. The second thing is monitoring and enforcing these regulations. And the third thing will be to be an enabler for the ecosystem of AI. And this strategy will go through all the verticals of the economy and the government and the social.
Well, it is an exciting future.
It is.
Although I really haven't used ChatGPT yet. I think it's just a matter of my age. My team has. And I think I can tell the difference when they give me a report, but I'm not 100% sure. We can all agree on a shared goal of healthy, sustainable people and planet. But we also know that the current economic trajectory that we've been on really for the last 60, 70 years is not a sustainable one. The work that's happening in the kingdom really goes beyond what we have been doing to a new, different type of tomorrow. Can you explain that vision and how it will change the way we live, the way we work, the way we play?
Absolutely.
And give us some examples, if you would, of specifics.
Absolutely. So the Vision 2030 started when King Salman became the king back in 2015, and the Crown Prince started immediately working on the transformation. It started as a transformation from what's happening in Saudi Arabia, which is an oil economy, to be more diverse. So the problem with the oil economy, which sometimes is a good problem to have, is you have huge resources coming in from selling oil and gas. The problem as an economy is if you just rely on one source of income, in some years you will do extremely well, and some other years you're not going to do as well.
Of course.
So that's why the decision was taken to diversify our economy. And the PIF started back in 1971 for different reasons than what we're doing right now, which is develop more of developmental, not looking for a sustainable way of deploying more investments. So the strategy of PIF changed to be more of profitable operations, and at the same time doing all the economic development. And it was the seed for the Vision 2030. So when we started at the government level working on the Vision 2030, it wasn't like, we sat down in a brainstorming session for 1 or 2 hours and then it was decided. It was a long process. Many, not hundreds, but thousands of people worked on this initiative, from all center of government, different ministries, private sector, sitting in workshops for long hours for about 1.5 or 2 years until this vision was materialized and it was then disclosed. I think the way the Vision 2030 looked at the Saudi economy and looked at the weaknesses, the strength, the threats, and the opportunities in a very methodical, practical way. We looked at a full diagnostic of the Saudi economy, and then we looked at the different benchmarks around the world, including the West, the East, the North, and the South. And then we came with the concept, and this concept was put or built around the Vision 2030 with different KPIs and different targets. I will give an example for these targets. We talked about women in the workplace. Our targets was by the year 2030, we should have 30% of women to be in the work environment in Saudi Arabia. To our surprise, in 2020, we achieved 35%.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, so 35%, and organizations, some of the organizations that I lead, they're over the 50%.
Yeah.
So the vision is looking at the economic growth, the social development, and the quality of living.
Right.
That's why we want to continue and sustain whatever that we've seen in the last 60 or 70 years and make it even better.
Now, when we were in the green room earlier, you were just giving me one example, and it's just one of many, of a futuristic city, Neom.
Yeah.
Can you just I want the people here to feel excited and inspired by this vision. Maybe you can just explain this one particular example.
Neom is part of something that we call Giga Project. It's not a real estate development. It's creating a whole ecosystem. And we discussed this before, as you said. Why this shape? Why the line? First of all, Neom is not only the line. The line is one of 7 different clusters.
His Excellency, I just want to explain to the people, it's one city that goes for 174 kilometers. But only 2 kilometers wide.
No, 200 meters wide.
200 meters wide.
And 500, the height is 500
meters high.
Yeah.
So just visualize this.
It is.
So that's why it's referred to as the line.
Exactly.
Right.
The idea is we don't want to ruin the nature. So instead of going and destroying the nature, building stuff, we're going to put it in a very small percentage of the whole zone.
It's the antithesis of sprawl.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at cities and urban developments all over the world, most of the cities were developed and built based on needs that were arised maybe 2,000 years ago. Rome was one of the largest cities that was built more than 2,000 years ago, and there was more than 1 million inhabitants, citizens of Rome. Most of the other cities like Paris, London, Washington, D.C. were based their urban design on Rome design. Mm-hmm. Most of the new cities were designed and built like 500 years or several hundred years ago. It wasn't for today's need. Neom is the revolution of urban development, where you enjoy more the environment and the nature around you, and at the same time, you are in the heart of the city. You can commute from point 1 to point B, no matter how far are they, within like 15 or 20 minutes, going vertically or horizontally. At the same time, you will have zero emission, and not net zero emission, it is zero emission, and possibly negative emission, because we will base all of our energy on solar, wind, green hydrogen, and storage. So it's more efficient at the same time. It costs more than 30% less than a conventional design. And it will improve the workplace, and it will improve the quality of living at the same time. So that's just an example. We have established more than 100 different companies, not only in real estate or residentials, but in different sectors that we're looking into. We're looking into 13 different sectors, from aerospace, airlines, agriculture, healthcare, manufacturing, AI, entertainment, sports. So we have so many examples, but that's one example, I think, that is mesmerizing the whole world because of the different design and the different concept that how urban design or cities should be built.
Well, it certainly is an exciting vision, and I just hope I can meet someone who can invite me to visit.
Richard Atias is here. So.
Okay. Okay, last question. So we in Asia, 85% of all companies, for small, medium, and large, are family dominated. And we think that's a good thing, because families are committed to place, committed to community, committed to legacy, and so they tend to think longer term and think about the positive contributions that they're making and their connectivity. But even beyond Asia, many companies are having to focus on ESG, CSR, sustainability as part of their mandate, and what society is their shareholders and society at large is expecting them to do. You invest in many, many companies. What do you look for, yes, in terms of management, but also in terms of leadership and vision that really makes you want to invest?
So the way we work in our investment methodology is to see what do we need. So that's one.
That's, I think, Warren Buffett model. What makes sense?
Yeah, what we need. So that's the first tick mark. Then where is the world going to? Mm-hmm. What are the new trends, the major trends that would make sense? And then we see how we can marry these two different variables by going there, looking at the commercial and financial feasibilities of going into such investments, and at the same time bringing it back to the domestic economy. And with that, you will, have your expected IRRs. You would have a GDP contribution, a job creation, and economic multiplier. Now, going back to the ESG and the environmental requirements that we need to have, we started a process last year, and we looked at all of our investments, starting from our office to all of our portfolio companies to all the investments that we have through third party. And we assessed all of these things. Mm-hmm. And we understand how much emission all of these investments is doing. So that's the first step. Mm-hmm. Second
Measurement
step
is important.
Exactly. So we need to do a full diagnostic on the thing. We've done that. We just finished it last month. Q1 of next year, we will start on rolling out our implementation plan to basically achieve our promise, which is we should be a net carbon zero organization by the year 2050. So we will start from next year, Q1, rolling out this strategy. Of course, you cannot just go and push a button and that's it. It's a long transition, and it needs a lot of planning. And that's what we're working on currently. Hopefully, by next year, we will have a better feasibility, how long it's going to take us, how much it's going to cost us, because there is an associated cost there, how we can turn this cost into opportunities. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll start rolling out our strategy next year.
I think that that's the major tipping point, when people see addressing these issues as an opportunity rather than a cost.
Absolutely.
And you would say that, by and large, you've tipped to the other side. That's terrific. I think we were also just talking about how in the Global South particularly, there's a lot of competing agendas. And Asia is on track at this point to reach 0 of the Sustainable Development Goals as a region. So finding that balance between economic opportunity and addressing climate change is really critical. And it sounds like that's front and center in what you're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the world right after the Industrial Revolution, the emissions started in Europe, then the US, then in the last few decades in China and India. But you cannot go to an emerging economy like economies in Africa or the rest of the world and ask them to switch to whatever advanced economies are doing. So I heard a comment from one of the African ministers during the COP28, and it resonated a lot with me. He said, in order for us to grow our economies, we have first to carbonize and then decarbonize. We haven't started even carbonizing yet.
Right.
If you look at the world today, you have more than 600 million people do not have access to conventional energy.
Right.
In the year 2050, there are going to be 2 billion people without access to conventional energy. Now, what is required for renewable energy is about $280 trillion by the year 2050 to 2060 from now. How much have we done so far? Less than $2 trillion. We should, according, I think, to a McKinsey study, we should deploy $9 trillion on renewable energy on an annual basis for the coming 40 plus years.
Right.
So we cannot just immediately go from point A to point B without thinking of the consequences and the impacts on different economies around the world and increasing the gap between the global south and the north. We need to be more considerate, and we need to look at the consequences of our actions.
I agree with you, but I also want to say we're sitting here in Hong Kong, and Asia is the epicenter of leapfrogging. And so maybe we can move ahead without going through too much of the carbonization.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I think that during this next 2 days, we're going to hear a lot of those ideas, those innovations, but I hope, I know that I'm inspired by your work and what you're doing and this summit, and so I think we've kicked off in a very positive way. So
that's good to know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
great.
That was great.
Thank you.
Thanks.